Okay, in this one, going to be doing a live sort of brainstorm session on taking that process map and your wireframe and actually turning that into nodes on a workflow canvas. So at this point, you should have already identified a good process. You should have documented all the steps and mapped out what it looks like. And hopefully you also got into something like Excalidraw or some sort of flowchart maker and you wireframed visually what the process looks like. And if you're in here in n8n, it means that you should have a very clear understanding of what it should look like when it's automated. So we talked about stuff like triggers, data sources, data transformation, and data destination. And then that's kind of when this piece of the workflow is at, a finished product. There's no such thing as a finished product in automation. I truly believe that because everything can be iterated upon. But anyways, let's just look at one example here. So I'm going to make myself a little smaller so I've got more room to work with. The use case here is that we're going to turn raw lead data into an enriched record with a personalized message. So at this point, we've already documented our steps. We know that the trigger is going to be a form submission. And so my first thought would be, okay, form submission. There's a couple options. Is the form on our website? Do they submit a form and then it gets triggered and it sends an email to us? How is the form captured, right? So that would translate into what type of node we're going to use. If the website, we can trigger an API call or an HTTP request and we could send the data to a webhook, then I would just set up a webhook right here and capture that form. Let's say we don't actually have a form set up yet. So what we can do for now is we're just going to grab a form trigger from n8n. So here's n8n form. We can have it trigger on a new form event, and we can set up this form. So basically what this means is that, let's just say this is going to be interested in working with us, ? Hello, and then when we hit test step, it's going to pull up this form for us to submit, and when we submit it, that's what triggers the workflow. As you can see, data came into this form trigger. So real quick, that's our trigger. Let me just set up, we want to get name, email, company name, and message. Let me just add a form element. This is going to be name. This is going to be company name. This is going to be email, and I'm going to change the element type to email. And then this one is going to be, message. So I went through that pretty fast. But all we're doing is we're setting up the fields to fill out, right? And the only reason I changed this one is because an email, we want it to be an email type. You see we could do a password, a text, custom HTML, a date. Anyways, what this is doing is now that when I hit test step here, it's going to pull up this form that we just set up. So the name I can put, Nate. Company name I can put Apple. Actually, no, let's do something that's a little more Honda cars. Email I'm going to put at gmail.com. And then message I'm going to say, hi, I'm looking for the best cookies in the world. So we'll submit that. The workflow starts. As you can see, now it's green. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to pin this data because I like to get my data from the trigger and then I want to pin it so we can play around with it for the rest of the workflow and not have to come back and submit a new form every time. Cool. So we've captured data. That's our initial data source capture. But now what we see is that we need to do more data sourcing. So what we need to do is a web search for the company. So it says use a web search node like Tavily or Google Search. And so we know the tool that we want to use, and we know if we're going to use Tavily for web search, we have to do that through an HTTP request. So that's just like a mental note. And then what we'll be doing is we'll search for the company name, and that's going to be a variable because it's going to change every time. So we'll get the information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an HTTP request because I know that's how we access Tavily's server. And now I have to set up the node. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this and go to Tavily. I'm going to log in, continue with Google. We'll get set up here. And then I can see I have my API key. You would obviously come in here and create one. You get 1,000 free credits a month. And then I would go to the documentation. So once I'm in the documentation, I can see this is the endpoint. And I know not going to dive too much into the documentation here because that's going to be like some later stuff where we'll dive more into it. So for now, don't worry about this actual configuration or what's going on everywhere. Just kind of understand that we're going to set up an HTTP request to use Tavily, which lets us search the web, and then we'll get that information back. So what I'm going to do is copy this curl command for the endpoint to search using Tavily search. I'll come back into my n8n, and I'm just going to import that curl command right in here. And then all I have to do really is tweak this a little bit and also put in my credential. So like I said, I'm not going to explain in the weeds of what's going on right here because we'll talk about that. I think there's actually a module later where I show you like how I set up Tavily, but I'm just going to credential myself, right? Because you need to basically authorize yourself when you're accessing something. And I'm just going to call this Tavily. So now we would basically set up our request. So this is what's going over to Tavily. And basically all you want to look at right here for now is just that we have a search query. And this is what Tavily would be searching the web for. So I don't want to search for who's Leo Messi. I want to search for the company name of this person. And as you can see now, it just switched to a expression. So I'm actually just going to get rid of that. Okay, just lost all that data. We're just going to import this curl again. So import the curl again. Let me just grab my credential back. Got Tavily. Okay, so I'm going to switch this to expression before I try to drag in my company name. I'm going to get rid of who is Leo Messi. I'm going to drag in the company name. And so now we'd be searching the web for Honda cars, as you can see. And what you could do is here is like, you could say company information. So then what that would be doing is every time it's going to search the web for company name, company information, as you can see. So we'll leave that like that, and I'll hit test step. It's calling Tavily's API, searching the web, and it comes back with an answer for us. So we have an answer, we have a URL for the, it went and searched Wikipedia, and then we found some content about Honda cars. What's next? Okay, also let me just pin this data so we don't have to make another API call. Next is a data transformation node. So we want to take this information about the person, as well as the message that they gave us, and we want to create some sort of output. So the input for this node is going to be the lead name, the company info, and the original message, and we want it to write something. So we have a little system prompt, your helpful assistant writing custom outreach messages to new leads. Based on the company info and the lead's message, write a short personalized follow-up. So we're going to use AI node here. We know that because this is something that has to be personalized, and we can't do that with traditional automation. So I am going to add an AI node. I'll click right here. I'm going to use an AI agent. And the first thing we want to do is set up the input. So the input is the user message. It's not from a connected chat trigger node. We're going to define the input below. And so all I'm going to do here is, what did we say we needed to drag in? We said we needed to drag in the lead name, the company info, and the original message. So back over here, all I have to do is I'm going to say, okay, lead name, company info, and original message. So all we have to do now is set up the actual variables for the agent to see that stuff. So for lead name, where did we get that from? What data source brought that in? That was the form submission. So I go down to form submission and I drag in the name right there. Company info, where did we get that from? That was when we searched the web. So I'm going to go to the search the web node and I'm going to output the answer, which was right here, company info. And then you can see on the right-hand side, it's popping up with the actual result. And then the original message, where did we get that from? We got that from the form submission. So I'm going to go to the message, drag that in. Now the agent, every time, will be able to see these three things. Next, what we have to do is we need to configure the agent to actually know what to do with that information. So that's where I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab the system prompt right here. So I grab the system prompt and basically we're going to add a system prompt down here, which tells the agent what it's going to do. So for now, I'm going to leave it as simple as this. Your helpful assistant writing custom outreach, right? And so now we hit test step, but we're going to get an error because we haven't chose what AI model we want to use to do that. So I'm going to choose a chat model. I'm going to use OpenRouter, and I'm going to choose, let's do Claude 3.5 Sonnet, just for fun. So I'm going to grab Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and now we should be good to go. If I hit play, this is actually going to run, use its brain, and it's crafting a message for us. So something else you could do, obviously, is you could, give it more information about your own company so it can make the lead message better. But what we can see now is that we got, hi, Nate. Thanks for reaching out. I have to admit your message about cookies caught me off guard. I usually talk about engines, not baked goods. Though speaking of records, well, Honda, blah, blah, blah. So as you can see, this is a message personalized to that lead form. What's next? Let me just pin this output so we don't have to run it again. What's next is we have a data destination. So now we want to make this data go into a Google Sheets node. So we would have a Google Sheet where we're going to do lead name, email, company name, company info, personalized message, and the timestamp. Okay, cool. So before I actually add the Google Sheets node, I'm going to go to Google Sheets. We're going to make this sheet real quick for data to send over to. I'm just going to call this a demo, and we're going to set up the fields. So we can see that the fields we have to send over are lead name, email, lead name, email, company info. I think it was enriched company info. Oh, company name, company info, personalized message, and timestamp. So this is wrong. This is going to be company name. This is going to be company info. This is going to be personalized message, and then this is going to be timestamp. Cool. So now that we have this set up, we can basically write data into here. So let me just change this up. Okay, so now we can write data into here. I'm going to add a new node, which is going to be a Google Sheets node. And we're going to do append row in sheet, which basically just means we're going to create a new row in a spreadsheet that we've already configured. So I'm going to, we've got our credentials figured out by now. We're going to choose the document, which is demo. We're going to choose the sheet, which is just sheet 1. That's the only sheet in there. And now it says that we are able to map columns. So this is just basically saying what do you want to put in each field for this record that we're creating. So once again, lead name, we're going to map that from the form submission. Oops. Email, we're going to map that from the form submission. Company name, we're going to grab that from the form submission. But now company info, we got that when we did our research. So looking at the Tavily research tool, we'll grab the answer, or we could grab the content, whatever you actually want to grab. This is company info. Actually, for now, let's grab the actual content. So here's the company info we found. Personalized message, that came from the AI agent. So I'm going to grab the AI agent's output. By the way, you can see here it ends off with best your name. You would put your own name in the system prompt and say, hey, this is how you should sign off with my name. Hold on, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that. And then for timestamp, this one's a little bit trickier, but not too bad. If I go to expression and I do 2 curly braces and then I say $now, this gives us a timestamp. So we have mapped all of our fields. Every time this automation runs, these same fields will come through, but there'll be different actual values. And if I hit test step, we go to our Google Sheet, we should see these values pop into Google Sheet. This means every time that someone submits a form, we will get a new record in Google Sheets with all this information, but it will be custom to that specific form submission. So now looking back at our process map, sort of documented steps, we can see that that was the data destination, and that's the end. So you've now built an automation that takes a raw lead, enriches them with public company data, and uses AI to generate personalized messages and stores everything for future action or review. And obviously this was a pretty simple use case. It was just 4 nodes, but this is like a very common one that we're seeing in the real world. It's just a little bit more robust. So it's better research being done. It's better prompting and personalization. And then it's storing it differently, meaning maybe there's like a node here that says like hasn't been approved, and there'd be a check marks or a check box. And then maybe it also would send to Sheets, but it would also notify the team in Slack and say, hey, new form submission, or would also send this to someone on email, something like that. But this is the idea that I take or the method that I take when I'm approaching building something, when I have the steps listed and I know where I need to get the data from. This is how I would approach doing that. And I also would have my wireframe kind of pulled up, because at that point I've already thought about, like I need to use a web search API and I need to use AI here and all that kind of stuff. So I hope that this was helpful.